Hey everyone, how's it going? So I asked for suggestions and people suggested Abra because Ghastly was easy. So time for a challenge. And I don't even know what to say about this. In terms of level up moves, Abra has the shallowest move pool. It learns one move, Teleport. That is it. That is the only move we can learn via level up, which we start with. In battle, Teleport allows you to escape from a wild Pokemon battle and does nothing in a trainer battle. So how the heck are we even going to get through the game with a Pokemon that can't attack? Eventually, we'll get to teach it TMs, but for now, we can't do that. You can't get any TMs until after you defeat Brock, and that's going to be super fun without attacking, right? Well, as you may know, there is a move you can attack with, Struggle. Once you used up the power points of all your other moves, your Pokemon will automatically use a 50 base power normal move, which as you can imagine is going to be super great against Brock's rock Pokemon, but it gets even better. Struggle deals recoil damage, meaning every time we deal damage with Struggle, half the damage we deal gets delivered right back to us. So yeah, this part of the game is super fun. You can't win the first battle, obviously, because you only have Teleport. Then after you get the Pokedex, essentially what you have to do is start to level up. Because we're not getting any assistance. Without items, there is nothing more we can do than hope we're at a high enough level to use Struggle and defeat 2 rock Pokemon that resist the move with exceptional defense that can attack us. If that sounds like it would take a really long time, you're not wrong. It takes a really, really long time, especially when you consider Abra has great stats for a pre-evolved Pokemon, at least in speed and special. Its attack, defense, and HP are some of the worst in the entire generation, and these are the most important stats. We need HP for recoil damage and to take back attacks. We need defense to help, not get hit too hard. And we need attack to knock out enemies fast. And all of those stats are terrible. And I could be wrong, but I've yet to find a single itemless Abra challenge out there. And I'm pretty sure this is why. Who would want to do this? I mean, me, obviously, but other than that, this is not fun. Like, this is one of the least fun parts of a challenge I've ever done. I found 100 Ralts. I've done 4 Magikarp challenges. 2 I haven't actually made yet, but I have done 4 of them. This was awful. Because unlike with Magikarp, where eventually you get Tackle and at least don't have to worry about the recoil damage, you're not getting anything. The only thing you're going to get is a higher level, which will allow you to knock out a few more Pokemon. But we haven't even talked about the biggest source of frustration. Struggle itself is very hard to maintain, because Struggle will naturally take away HP from recoil damage. And in order to have Struggle, you need to be at 0 power points. But since it causes you to just hemorrhage HP, you have to heal. And healing at the Pokemon Center gives you back all your power points, meaning you have to find 20 more Pokemon, which can take a while, and use Teleport all over again. In the beginning, this isn't so bad. There are a bunch of potions available before Pewter City. You can't actually buy potions in Viridian. They added that in Yellow. So people always ask when I do these challenges why I don't get potions when I do items challenges. That's why. You can't buy them in Viridian. You can in Pewter. And using items out of battle is always allowed. In fact, if we didn't use items out of battle, this would take probably twice as long. I'm not kidding. And the strategy basically becomes, as you've probably seen already, you find Metapod or Kakuna. Why them? They give you a lot of experience points and they can't attack you. Use Struggle till they faint. When your HP gets too low, heal with a potion. And once you've gained enough levels, you can defeat the level 9 Weedle Bugcatcher, go to Pewter, and buy 10 potions. He only gives you 90 Pokédollars. You will have 3,000, that's how much you start with. Thankfully, losing to the rival doesn't take away any money. It just doesn't give you any, which isn't great, but it's what we have to deal with. And that gives you at least a buffer. But that buffer will run out. In the meantime, once your level is high enough, you can fight the 2 other bug catchers, and they're kind of hard to defeat. Losing to them isn't a big deal because we don't really have money to lose. There's also the junior trainer in Brock's gym. For the first little bit, you'll just be able to defeat the Diglett, but not the Sandshrew. And it's at this point you really recognize how in trouble we are. Because we're not even able to defeat 2 Pokemon at lower levels that don't resist our moves. Think about how problematic it's going to be facing a Geodude and Onyx that have better attack and do resist our moves. You can also fight Rival 1A, I call him, because I usually skip this rival fight, but we need all the experience points we can get. Still, even after you've gotten good enough to defeat all these trainers, and beat the rival, and get past the Sandshrew, you're not even close to beating Brock. In fact, you might not even get past the Geodude at that point. In addition, while it's taking more and more experience points to level up, you've already started to run out of potions, and that means we have to heal at the Pokemon Center, and every time we run low on HP, we have to go to the grass, find 20 more Pokemon, rinse and repeat, and this just slows the game down so much, and it was even starting to hurt my finger. And you just keep doing this for hours. Thus far, the longest a run has taken me to beat the game is 7 hours, 27 minutes of in-game time. It was 11 hours in, and I was nowhere close to defeating Brock. And at this point, you're probably wondering, what will I need to defeat Brock other than leveling up? What will need to happen? So let me just show you some unsuccessful fights, and we'll talk about generally what we need to see. Now, Geodude can use 2 moves, Tackle and Defense Curl. Defense Curl is the better move, but we also need Abra to get critical hits. Thankfully, in Generation 1, the chance of Abra getting a critical hit is not the 6.25% that we're used to in current generations, but rather it's around 20%. I think it's actually closer to 18 due to Abra's speed. And critical hits in Generation 1 are based off speed. Still, we need quite a few of them because the more defense curls Geodude uses, the less damage we do, to a point. Eventually you just start doing 1 damage, which is the least amount of damage you can do with a not very effective attack. But critical hits bypass that, and you actually see before defense curls that we do decent-ish damage considering it's an Abra using a 50 base power normal move. Eventually, you'll start getting past the Geodude, and it'll even start getting consistent. But Geodude is actually the easier of the 2 Pokemon. Onyx is a whole different story. Onyx has 3 moves. Tackle, which we don't want to see, Screech, which we do want to see, and Bide, which we really don't want to see. Onyx is higher defense than Geodude, and using Bide is a big problem. But before we can even deal with any of that, you should realize that if you don't have 18 HP going into the Onyx fight, it's actually mathematically impossible for you to win, because recoil is equal to half damage with a minimum of 1. So even if you dealt all 36, and yes, this Onyx has 36 HP, even if you got a 1-hit KO, half of that is 18 HP, so you need at least 19. And even that isn't going to be good enough, not nearly good enough, because Onyx will use Tackle, and it will use Bide. And while critical hits are still nice, if you get a critical hit while it's charging up a Bide attack, you're pretty much guaranteed to be knocked out by the Onyx. And this was happening time and again. If Onyx didn't have Bide, this fight would be a whole lot easier, but with Bide, it's just so luck-based. And this is why people don't like itemless runs. This is why you don't do an Abra itemless run, because there's no strategy to use here. There are no TMs to get. There are no items that can help us out. It's actually a big problem with the beginning of lots of Pokemon games, not just Generation 1, but at least in later games there are held items, maybe a more diverse move pool we can use, but there is nothing. You just simply have to go back into the grass, keep gaining levels, it takes longer and longer, and hope you get lucky. Eventually I did, And there's no real strategy here. The Geodude didn't attack, I got the critical hits I needed, and the Onyx didn't use Bide or Tackle too much. Think about it, I want Screech, but Screech is a double-edged sword because while it's not an attack, if it hits me with a Tackle after a Screech, it deals way more damage. Now, a couple times I was very close to knocking out the Onyx, even at lower levels, so I knew it was possible, but those close calls were few and far between, and it took like half an hour between my last almost beating Onyx until I finally did. And yes, I was thrilled. I don't think I've been that relieved in a run in a long time, and in all the runs I've done before, I have never had to go all the way up to level 27 before I defeated Brock. But after you defeat Brock, the game is easy, right? Well, not exactly. The next 4 trainers are still kind of annoying, because even though we have a TM now, Bide isn't actually better than Struggle, so we're going to want to use Struggle, and that means we need to make sure our health is good enough. Thankfully, we do get a bunch of money to buy potions, and you shouldn't actually need to heal more than one time to get through all 4 trainers. We're not going to battle any more of them because I am done with Struggle. And once you get past all 4 and go to Mount Moon, you can get Mega Punch. An Abra using Mega Punch would usually be unheard of, but after using Struggle, I cannot even begin to articulate how elated I was to get to use a move that didn't deal recoil damage and getting to use Pokemon Centers again. There are a couple trainers you need to fight, but they're not hard. We're so over-leveled, even with our terrible attack, Mega Punch, which is a pretty strong attack in of itself, can usually one-shot everything. And this continues once we get to Cerulean. The rival fight is still annoying because Pidgeotto takes multiple hits to take down. I decided to fight the rival first, although Misty would have been easily defeatable as well. Thankfully, even with my terrible accuracy, I was able to spam Mega Punch, and you can run out. It only has 20 power points, but I luckily didn't run out. Even with all the accuracy drops, I was able to hit Mega Punch enough times not to take too much damage and to get through Rival 2. And this is actually the most difficult fight for, like, the next 70% of the game. I'm not kidding. Because we're now super over-leveled, and we're about to get even better TMs. The only fight you might think would be difficult is the Onyx Hiker, but he's not. In fact, the only really annoying thing at this part is you only have 20 power points for Mega Punch and you're going to run out. So you have to go back to the Pokemon Center, and it was at this point I decided to fight Misty. There wasn't really any challenge. My special is super high, and I'm at a pretty great level. So her water moves are not very threatening at all. Mega Punch is also dealing pretty decent damage, so I was able to easily take out both Staryu and Starmie, move on to defeat the rest of the trainers, and I did actually fight the second Hiker, which I don't usually fight, but I did want Seismic Toss and I didn't feel like coming back. It wasn't too much of a problem. I was worried I wouldn't have enough Mega Punches, but it was fine. And Seismic Toss really will help out with Rock Pokemon for this next section, and is why they actually aren't as much of a problem as you might think. After we get the SS ticket, we can board the SSN, and like in a lot of runs, we're going to get Body Slam. It's similar in power to Mega Punch, but it has 100% accuracy and Paralyze. So we're going to be using that going forward. And it makes quick work of Rival 3. Everything but Kadabra is a 2-hit KO. Kadabra is a 1-hit KO. Always oddly satisfying when you're able to feint the evolved Pokemon of the Pokemon you're using in one of these runs. Oh, and I guess this is also a good point to talk about why I had the rival pick Charmander. So, Charmander may not have the best defense, that would be Wartortle, but the rival will pick his 2 Pokemon he uses for the rest of the run based on what starter he picked. So, there are 3 Pokemon, Exeggutor, Gyarados, and Arcanine, talking about the final battles. As you will see, for Abra, the most annoying Pokemon to face are definitely the Exeggutor and the Gyarados. The Arcanine actually might be more annoying than the Exeggutor, but in order for us to have Arcanine and Gyarados, that would mean the rival would have Venusaur, which eventually I will be able to hit for super effective damage, So this is what I figured would be the most challenging combination going forward. I do try and make these as challenging as possible because, I don't know, that's just how I am. Anyway, I've been talking long enough that we're almost at Lieutenant Surge. We are going to fight him here. He's not easy, I guess. I mean, I did beat him first try, but he did deal significant damage. You can see Thunderbolt, usually the scariest attack, did next to nothing. Again, Special in Generation 1 is both offensive and defensive, and this is an instance where that becomes really cheap, at least in my favor. It makes me kind of excited for when I eventually do this in Gold and Silver, because I feel that the split of Special Attack and Special Defense is just a little bit more balanced. So, yeah, spoiler, we're going to be doing Gold and Silver, but we have a long way to go. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, both in this run and in the series. So, once Lieutenant Surge is defeated, we're going to go through Rock Tunnel. Rock Tunnel isn't necessarily easy. Cubone and Slowpoke are annoying, but Seismic Toss helps. They both have really good defense, so Seismic Toss can deal oftentimes more damage than Body Slam. The Hiker with the 2 Geodudes and the Graveler, I did defeat first try, but if he used Self-Destruct, that would have been really bad. And definitely if I did this run again, you know I would lose like 5 times in a row, but after spending 12 hours without getting further than Pewter City, I will not be complaining about good luck for the rest of this run. Once you get through Rock Tunnel, there's one more trainer to beat, and then the run gets really easy. Years ago, I wanted to do this without getting Psychic because that would be really difficult, and I almost did it for this video, but then I realized it would ruin the numbers and it wouldn't be fair because it's just making it arbitrarily difficult. So maybe for the Impossibles challenge, I'll do like yellow version, because I don't want to do red and blue again, where I don't actually pick up Psychic, because Psychic is actually the only special attacking move Abra can learn in Generation 1. But it is the best move Abra can use, so not really a huge problem. And with Psychic, we can go wherever we want. Giovanni, not a problem. Pretty much everything is a one-hit KO. In fact, I had a little counter that I lost, where I was keeping track of how many things I could one-hit KO in a row. Eventually it was the Rival's Execute, and there's also an Execute in Erica's gym, so streak would have ended there, but everything else just gets obliterated. I'm still very over-leveled, but as I go through the game, one thing you may notice, especially if you compare to the Ghastly run, which was minimum battles, is that I'm not actually at that much of a higher level than Ghastly was. And the reasoning is actually pretty simple. All that time I spent in Viridian Forest, I was only gaining like 50 experience points at a time. In total, I gained about 20,000. In the late game, if you think about it, that's only 1 or 2 levels. That's all 20,000 experience points really matters. So if you're only worried about the Elite Four, it doesn't actually make much sense time-wise to spend your time battling all these early trainers, because their experience points, while helpful in the mid-game, aren't going to matter much towards the late and end game. And I just wanted to address it because it's something I definitely noticed and was kind of taken aback by until I thought about it. Anyway, after you defeat Erica, you can go on Cycling Path and try and fight Koga. Koga is easy himself, everything's a one-hit KO. The jugglers, once again, prove to be a little more tricky, by which I mean sometimes it takes 2 attacks versus 1. I mean, the Hypno takes a few, so that's something. You also see I'm using Seismic Toss. I kind of experimented a bit, and since Drowsy and Hypno have such decent special and defense, Seismic Toss seemed to be doing the most damage. Didn't really matter. All of them were first tries, and then, of course, against Koga, I outspeed. Everything's a one-hit KO, and we can move on to Sylph Company. In Sylph Company, there's a single rocket with an Arbok, and then we face rival Fievel. Now, remember how I said I wasn't going to complain about good luck? I got a lot of good luck in this fight, so it was a first try victory. In fact, I have yet to have a single fight since I've gotten Psychic that took more than 1 attempt. In fact, my last time was in Rock Tunnel. But this is definitely not an easy fight. Pidgeot does significant damage with Quick Attack, and it takes 2 Psychics. I wasn't sure whether or not I should use Seismic Toss or Body Slam or Psychic against Execute. I went for Seismic Toss, and then for the third attack went for Body Slam, and it didn't even knock it out since it used Reflect, so that was dumb. I also got hit with Leech Seed, which isn't great, because that can slowly drain my health, especially now that we have the Gyarados and Alakazam. Gyarados would definitely been more than a one-hit KO, but I got a critical hit. And that luck would continue against the Alakazam, where I get a critical hit, it paralyzes, and then it doesn't move due to the paralysis. And for good measure, I get another critical hit. That's 3 critical hits in a row. Then the Charizard comes out, Psychic does not knock it out in one hit, and it goes for Rage. Every attack pretty much would have been better. Rage was the worst attack I could pick, but I'm not going to complain. And so we can just move on, easily defeat Giovanni. I mean, you know a fight is easy when I don't even bother to heal in between. And after we beat Giovanni, we could fight Sabrina, but I was a little worried about her, so I decided to take my chances going to Cinnabar and fighting Blaine first. I figured Blaine would be the easier of the two, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Nah, I'm kidding, that was for the ad break. No, Blaine was a joke. Psychic one-shot the Growlithe, did not one-shot the Ponyta, but didn't matter. Rapidash got a critical hit, and Arcanine decided to use Ember. Will any of these gym leaders pose a challenge? Well, Sabrina has the best probability, since her Psychic Pokemon will resist my Psychic attacks, but her best attacks are also mostly Psychic attacks. So the first 3 Pokemon don't really pose much of an issue. In fact, they do exactly, 8 HP, I believe? And that's the Mr. Mime, which used Double Slap. I use Seismic Toss, it takes 2 hits to knock out both the Kadabra and the Mr. Mime. Possibly Body Slam would have been better, who cares? Venomoth is a 1-hit KO with Psychic, and then the Alakazam came out. Now, the Alakazam probably could have been dangerous if it used Psywave, but I believe it's because the AI thinks Psywave would be resisted by my Psychic Pokemon that it uses its normal move, Recover. And that makes this fight really tedious because both Seismic Toss and Body Slam deal less than 50%. So basically, I just need Body Slam to paralyze, then for her to be not able to attack. It took a little bit of time, but in the end, what looked to be the toughest gym leader of them all turned out to be another easy first try victory. And unsurprisingly, Giovanni will not break that trend either. It's at this fight you really notice, because I've basically gone minimum battles the rest of the way, that I'm not over-leveled anymore. I'm right around where his Pokemon are. Every single one is a 1-hit KO except for Rhydon. I was surprised by this. It also dealt pretty significant damage with Stomp. Usually it goes for Fissure, which wouldn't have affected me. Doesn't matter, I still win, but that sense of victory is going to be short-lived, because it's at this point where the game finally becomes more difficult once again. Rival Fievel, you could see, could have been difficult. Rival 6 is an improved version of that, and I'm not over-leveled anymore. My initial idea was to mimic agility and to take advantage of the badge boost glitch. I know some of you are so annoyed to hear that, but Generation 1 gives you an opportunity for a good strategy. You're gonna use it. But it didn't actually work. Abra's just too frail, and even with my great special, eventually I would start getting my health chipped away. Kadabra, which I've used in many runs that you haven't seen, is perfect because it gets Recover. So when I face Pokemon that are a little annoying, I can stall them out. Abra doesn't have that option since Recover is a level up move, not a TM. And so when it takes more than 1 or 2 hits to knock out a Pokemon, I just start taking damage. Also, the Execute is very annoying, being able to use Poison Powder, Leech Seed, or Stun Spore, with Stun Spore being the worst. And the Alakazam this time is not afraid to attack me. So I was trying again and again. I even tried manipulating my experience points so that I wouldn't gain a level in between. It wasn't making a difference. And like I've said in previous videos, when you reach a point where you're trying a battle again and again and nothing is really working, the best solution is to use rare candies. And at that point, I still didn't win. The Execute is still not a 1-hit KO. I got hit with both Stun Spore and Leech Seed. Alakazam hit me with Psybeam. I was confused, and I lost the fight once again. Granted, you may not have seen that yet, but I didn't use the Mimic strategy, so I decided to use the Mimic strategy at the higher level, and I was successful at that point. Now, it doesn't start off looking too great. To set up 3 agilities takes some time. Pidgeot is decent enough attack that it's going to start chipping away at my health, considering I'm an Abra and have terrible defense. I did get a Whirlwind, so that helped, but it was very, very close. Rhyhorn once again was a one-hit KO, and Execute was as well, but that may have been because of the critical hit as opposed to the agilities. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm not complaining. Gyarados hung on by just a little bit, but used Leer, which is very helpful since that further increases my stats, and I knock it out with a second Psychic. Alakazam could have been very obnoxious, but it decided not to attack me, and I'm still not sure why the rival uses potions in this fight. There's a lot of weird things about Generation 1, and this is one of the weirdest. It's so late in the game, who would even have potions? I mentioned I got a little lucky in this run. This is another instance of that, but I didn't need any luck for Charizard with my badge boost, and it was a one-hit KO. And this fight was genuinely pretty difficult and highlights the weaknesses of Abra. We always think of the Abra line as very strong. Without those level up moves, it's just not as good as it could be. Recover could have made this a whole lot easier since I would have recovered against the Alakazam, would have taken the luck completely out of this fight, but that's why I like using pre-evolved Pokemon, since it offers the greatest amount of challenge while still getting to use a wide variety of Pokemon. But I'm sure you're wondering, with how tough that rival fight was, how is the Elite Four going to be? Are you going to battle a whole bunch of trainers? No, I never do. I always want to see if I can beat them at a low level, because that's very fun. And as it turns out, the Elite Four start off ridiculously easy. So cue the Pokemon Conquest Ice theme. Loralee leads off with Dugong and goes for Growl. That is the best case scenario because it boosts my stats. Thanks, Badge Boost Glitch. With that boost, you can one-hit KO the Cloyster. I didn't, but I knocked its health down to low enough where Loralee used a Super Potion, so 2 Pokemon, no damage, not bad. The Slowbro, you've seen me do this before. I'm going to mimic Amnesia and use it 3 times. Now, Slowbro only has one attacking move, Water Gun, and it chose not to use it, which is very nice of it. It even tried to help me out with a couple growls, but it doesn't matter. I did get a critical hit. Everything is a one-hit KO once you get the 3 Amnesias. If that doesn't happen, so I one-hit KO the Jinx, and I one-hit KO the Lapras. You actually can get a critical hit. It will still one-hit KO. And we've defeated Loralee, which, by the way, I looked it up. It is apparently a totally valid, if not uncommon, pronunciation. So, I'm pretty much wrong, but not totally wrong. Take that, people in the comment section. Okay, I'm kidding. Anyway, Bruno requires some really 2000 IQ strategies. You have to make sure you hit the A button enough times so that you use Psychic 5 times. This is very important. If you don't hit the A button enough times, nothing happens. And nothing really bad can happen either. But if you do, Bruno loses, and you still don't take any damage. Holy moly. This is pretty crazy. Can we beat the Elite Four without taking any damage? Well, it's gonna be close because Agatha's first Gengar is a range, meaning it's possible to one-hit KO but not guaranteed. In this fight, I get the one-hit KO, and her next 3 Pokemon are all one-hit KOs as well, the Golbat, the Haunter, and the Arbok, which I just remembered is actually a range. It's a 1 in 16 chance it takes 2 Psychics. Didn't happen here. The second Gengar is a 1 in 16 chance that it will be a one-hit KO. We need a non-attacking move, and we get Dream Eater, which is an attacking move, but can't actually hurt us, and we have now gone through 3 of the Elite Four without taking damage. Man, this is so easy, right? Nothing can get in our way. And then you fight Lance. Lance is legitimately difficult, since most of his Pokemon use Hyper Beam, and I have terrible defense. So, I hate to tell you, forget about not taking damage. Trying to beat Lance took me many attempts, and still required a little bit of luck, I hate to say. So as he leads off with Gyarados, you'll notice I've taught Reflect. This will help out so I don't get one-hit KO by Hyper Beam, but takes a turn to set up, so it is a little risky. Thankfully, it goes for Leer, which is by far the best case scenario since it raises my stats. It's still going to be a 2-hit KO with Psychic. It hits me with a Hydro Pump on the next turn, doesn't deal too much damage, and I knock it out with a Psychic. And here's where I need a little bit of good luck. We're not going to one-hit KO the Dragonair unless we mimic Agility and get another badge boost. But it has the opportunity to hit us with a Hyper Beam, which isn't really great. I mean, it has to recharge, which is good, but now I have to go through the rest of Lance with 26 health, and I can only set up a single Agility. So I go for Psychic, and even with the Leer, Dragonair survives. Thankfully, Lance uses a Hyper Potion. I didn't realize it was just a range. And for those of you who've asked me what I mean by that, in Pokemon, unlike some simpler RPGs, attacks don't deal the exact same damage. There's a random number which determines whether it deals a little bit more or a little bit less. I got a little bit less. Thankfully, Lance uses a Hyper Potion, and I am able to get the range the next time. I also get a critical hit against the following Dragonair, so we don't have to worry about damage ranges. Until Aerodactyl, which I don't even think is a damage range. I'm pretty sure I'd need another Agility for it to be even potentially a one-hit KO. Thankfully, weird Generation 1 mechanic where they use potions after you attack helps me out, and I get a critical hit, which is really lucky. But that's nothing compared to what happens against Dragonite. I get a special drop, which is a 1 in 3 chance. It misses with a Slam, which I think only has a 20% chance of missing, and because I got that special drop, the next Psychic will deal enough damage to knock out the Dragonite. So, an insanely lucky Lance fight, and a good reason I do not reset between Elite Four battles, because the odds are, while you could get lucky against one trainer, you have to have a strategy that works to be able to defeat 5 of the game's toughest trainers in a row. And we're now about to face the toughest one. One that we've already seen gives me real problems. And hilariously, if we win, like I mentioned earlier, all those experience points only equate to having 2 more levels than doing the minimum battles. And yes, for those of you who are going to ask, Abra and Ghastly are in the same experience group, so they gain experience in the same manner. Having said all this, let's talk about the final battle. Now this time, I remember that Pidgeot doesn't have Agility for me to mimic, so I just go for Psychic. He thankfully goes for Whirlwind, and I'm able to take out the Pidgeot with a second Psychic and not take any damage, which is very helpful. Because now we have the Alakazam, which can really be problematic. If it lowers my special, that's bad both for offense and defense. But even while knowing that, I decide to mimic Recover, because many of these Pokemon will take multiple hits to knock out, and we're going to need a way to gain health back. Thankfully, the Alakazam does not use Psychic in this entire fight. It uses 2 Psybeams and a Reflect. Meanwhile, I opt to use Seismic Toss because I wasn't sure if Psychic would deal more damage. This is the first time I'd fought the rival, and I knew Seismic Toss would be a 2 or 3 hit KO. And while the fight isn't over, I'm definitely very relieved to get the Alakazam out of the way. Now, Rhydon is relatively safe, even though I'm pretty sure it'll be a 2-hit KO, which it will be. A Fury attack, especially if it critical hits could be bad, goes for Horn Drill, which cannot affect me since I outspeed it, and I'm able to knock it out with another Psychic. After that comes out Executor, which usually is not a problem, but against Abra is a huge problem because it has decent attack, and Stomp does really good damage. So I'm going to set up Reflect, and of course, he gets a critical hit, but thankfully it was with Barrage that only lasted 2 turns. Had it lasted 5, that would have been the battle, and critical hits ignore Reflect. Not wanting to chance it, I go for Recover, and he once again goes for Barrage, which hits but doesn't critical hit, so I would have survived, didn't want to chance it. I use Psychic this turn, and you can just see that is not going to work, and he goes for a Stomp. Even with Reflect, that's doing some pretty decent damage. Thus, I figure it's best to recover, and good thing I did because he used another Stomp. Thankfully, that was the last time he used Stomp. I was able to use Seismic Toss to take out the Executor. I did use one more Recover to get my health back, and he missed with a Barrage, meaning I'm going into the final section of this fight at 120 out of 134 health. That is as optimal as I could hope for, because we now have to face Gyarados, which has Hyper Beam. Psychic does not even do half damage. It uses Hyper Beam, of course, and I just barely survive on 29 health. You can see why those recovers were so necessary. At this point, I went for a very risky play. I used Recover, thinking ahead to the Charizard, instead of going for Psychic, This is risky because I didn't even do half damage, and the only way I could get a one-hit KO is if it was a bad damage roll the previous attack and I got a good damage roll, and if I was wrong and he used Hyper Beam, it wouldn't deal 96 damage, it dealt 91 the last time. Thankfully, I was correct about the damage ranges, and I got a good range this time, allowing Psychic to be a 2-hit KO. I don't know if I can even call that lucky because I got so unlucky with the first Psychic damage, but whatever. We're on to Charizard, and I cannot see Slash. That will knock me out. Thankfully, it misses with Fire Spin, the best possible outcome, and Psychic is able to take it out on the next turn. So after all that, we were able to beat the game and end up with a Pokemon just 2 levels higher than the best Pokemon ever. On the other hand, it took 17 hours, 18 minutes of in-game time. 10 hours more than double of the next longest Pokemon. So where to put Abra on the tier list? I have to say the bottom. Because part of the difficulty of doing these challenges is just having the patience to spend those hours leveling up your Pokemon to get by Brock. It's definitely not skill in the traditional sense, and if we just count the second half of the game, Abra would definitely rank number 2, but it's so hard to ignore 12 hours. And in the end, we are talking about a full game run. And let's be honest, in terms of whether someone else would want to do this, who in their right mind would? That's why we don't see Abra runs very often, because they're so annoying. And I get that perhaps some of you feel that shouldn't factor into my criteria, but to me, part of what makes a run difficult is whether someone would actually want to complete it, and there's such a low chance of anyone actually wanting to do this for good reason, it has to be last. At least for now. Thus, thank you for everyone who suggested Abra. There are a couple other Pokemon I've seen in the suggestions, so if you want your Pokemon to be seen soon, continue to comment what you'd like to see. I'm trying to hit 200,000 subscribers by the end of the series, so that would be kind of cool if you want to subscribe. But anyway, this video has lasted a very long time, just like this run did. But hopefully by watching this, you won't actually have to do it, because I don't think that would be very fun. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, take care.